People around the world, you're welcome on POP Podcast, Progress Over Perfection, the podcast that will change your life forever. Are you ready? Let's go! Ciao a tutti and you welcome to a new appointment podcast with POP, Progress Over Perfection, the podcast that change your life forever. Today we're going to talk with Kellie Sheldon. Kellie Sheldon is a trauma and sex therapist based in Perth, Western Australia, specializing in helping individuals and couples explore relationship, intimacy, and healing without shame. You're welcome, Kellie. How are you?
Thank you. It's great to be here. How are you?
Very good. Kellie, we already have a few interesting conversations in the last couple of weeks. And this is why now you're here, because I really believe that you have a lot of things that we can learn from you, especially because today we're going to talk about different kind of relationship, open relationship, swinging, that you actually study and worked for a long time. Can you tell me a little bit more about the story, how you started, and what is your history about to become a sex therapist?
Way when in my old life, I was a decorator by trade. And I remember thinking to myself at one point, there has to be more to life than making pretty houses for people. And so that sort of started the whole journey about getting into some sort of mental health or something. The plan was originally actually going to be a speech therapist, but moving from Queensland to WA sort of derailed that a little bit. So I ended up doing psychology and counselling at uni for my undergrad. And I did a unit in my counselling side of things that was called therapeutic practice and sexuality. And that was something that completely just grabbed me, because at that point I sort of went, I'm just here and I'm learning all this stuff and I didn't exactly know what I wanted to do with it. So that was the time right then and there that I just sort of went, this is something that I actually really want to go and learn and do quite a bit with. So I finished my undergrad, went on and did postgrad studies, looked at the programs for sexology. During COVID, I had applied to go over to Sydney to do their sexology program over there. And because the borders were shut, couldn't go anywhere. They didn't offer it online. So it was just something that I went, well, this is just not going to be in my future to do this. So I ended up sourcing a whole heap of different other avenues to learn from, talking from literally people in the community and right through, and focusing on areas where I actually needed to feel as though there was gaps in our learning. So, and the biggest difference that I found is when I looked at the psychology degrees and the counselling and the sexology ones, is a lot of the sexology stuff is great for information for history, but it didn't seem to sort of hone right in on problems that people were actually facing, and that's where we want it to sit. So that's why I decided to go straight into that sort of area of it. So just a lot of extensive work in pinpointing certain problems and doing research around that.
And what did you discover doing this? Because you told me that you did research. And what did you discover between your study?
There's this whole other world out there. That monogamy is one sort of side of things, and we were pushed into monogamy because that's the way that religion wanted, like the Christian way wanted to be. And it was also so back in the day we could actually find, when people were having children, that father was that mother's, they had that baby together. Whereas prior to that, monogamy was not actually that big a deal. People would be out there and they'd be having multiple partners. It's only because it became the norm. And that's what became expected. But what the other side of it all is, though, that some people are wired, and I honestly believe this, that some people are wired to be monogamous and some people just aren't. And there's a whole heap of stigma around ethical non-monogamy. So that's the key word here, is ethical non-monogamy, which is when everybody involved has actually given consent and full permission, compared to monogamous relationships. And there's a little mini war that goes on between the ethical non-monogamy and the monogamous communities. So that's quite interesting. Yeah.
Ethical non-monogamous. So we learned something new today, a new word, ethical non-monogamous. This is the right way to describe a different way to be in relationship. What are the misconceptions about open relationship, swinging, kinks, BDSM? So what is the misconception about ethical non-monogamous?
I think one of the biggest ones, especially when it comes to open and swinging, is more along the lines of that people just want to cheat, but they're doing it in a way where they have permission. So they don't actually realize how much work goes into having successful ethical non-monogamy relationships. The amount of conversations, the amount of negotiation, the amount of boundary setting, the amount of how much you get to know each other, how much stuff comes up, even within yourself around jealousy and shame and all of that type of thing. There is a lot of work that goes into it. But the other bit that's really interesting is that when they get it right, especially when we're talking BDSM kink, dominant and submissive dynamics, is that there is less of a power struggle that goes on between each party. So therefore their relationship is actually seen as being more beneficial. No, more happy, possibly, because they're not arguing all the time. They know exactly where they stand with each other, and there's none of this, oh, but I want to do this and no, you want to do that. So that was a huge thing, was learning. Actually, when I actually was introduced to the kink community myself into Perth, that was a huge thing that I actually discovered, was the amount of power struggle that actually disappeared. And that way people just knew what was expected of them. It's almost like Sheldon, and you know Sheldon on Big Bang, and he goes and sets out contracts. Same thing. Yeah, this is what's expected.
You're telling me that actually the community, the couple that live this kind of lifestyle, learn to communicate, because it's so complex as a relationship that is not that the monogamous is not complex. In fact, 50% of the couples are still divorcing, and probably the number are higher. So you're telling me that actually these people are going through this kind of transformation from monogamous to open, or anyway, alternative relationship. They actually start to have the communication they never had before.
Absolutely. Correct? Yeah, we see that a lot. It's a different level of communication. You can't sit in and hold something back and hold a feeling back. You have to say it, because otherwise, as in with monogamy, it festers and resentment starts, and that's the beginning of the end, right? Whereas when you start introducing other partners, you have to be honest. Otherwise, it will literally just fall to pieces. Yeah.
What do you think, what drive people to explore non-traditional relationships?
They're curious. They feel like they're missing something in their life. They think that they have this deep sense of, I can give more love to more people than just my partner. They've got this belief that one person can't give you everything, and neither should they, which is why when you're talking about polyamory, you'll quite often have people who have got different qualities coming into the relationship to form that dynamic. And it's because they don't believe that one person should be there, be and all. They should be able to go to other people to get their needs met. So there's less pressure on one person to be everything. The whole exploration. They want to keep things spicy. Yeah.
The people that move in this kind of relationship are the people that maybe want to go because, for example, there's this belief that people have a discrepancy between partners in their relationship. They start to wonder if non-monogamous relationship can be better for the relationship. Do you think it is the right way to start this kind of conversation, or should be something disconnected from the power between the two in the relationship?
I mean, absolutely. People have been known to sort of go, okay, I think I want to try non-monogamy to fix because they think it'll actually fix their relationship. It's just the same as some people who believe that having a baby will fix their relationship. So if our sex drives are mismatched, or if our needs around sex are mismatched, then we'll go out and we'll see what else we can find. And it's a way that people do start having a conversation. Something has to spice it up, right? Something's got to go, oh, hang on a minute, something's missing. Let's bring that to the table. The issue is how they do it and whether or not they're actually realizing that they're doing it ethically. So what can happen and what I've seen happen is quite often there is one person that wants to open the relationship up, the other person doesn't. And then the person who doesn't feels as though sometimes they're being forced into opening up the relationship. Otherwise, they're going to lose their partner. So then they agree out of fear. And that's where it gets really messy because, again, it comes back to that for some people, they have this innate, I want to share my love with everybody and I want to do this, whereas some people, they don't. But it's that being forced. And when we're being forced, that's not enthusiastic consent. So therefore, it's not ethical non-monogamy, even if you're agreeing. Because if you're being forced into it, then you're not being ethical about it at all because somebody wants to do it. So it's the two camps, right? Are we looking at like people who have got an insecure attachment who have got sitting on the avoidance spectrum who sort of go, oh, I want to go out and I can't connect with this person, so I'm going to go out and have multiple partners? Or are they actually wanting to spread their love and be with multiple people?
Are you saying that those people, they need to have consent between them, otherwise doesn't work? So if, for example, I want to open my relationship, what is the first step for me to do?
Deep inner search. Why do you want to open it? Why? Be really curious about the why. Because if it's just on if you wake up one day and go, I feel like I'm going to go and want an open relationship tomorrow, or I want to try swinging. It's like, yeah, cool. But why? Is it because you feel as though something's missing? Or do you feel as though this is actually something you've been thinking about for a while and you've denied yourself? Because that can happen too. But the why, it's exploring the why and staying in that curiosity space to try and understand what's going on for you to why you want to start it and why you want to open.
So probably the best things to do is, if I want to do something like this, go and talk with someone like you as a sex therapist and try to understand what is the meaning behind my thought about opening the relationship. Then what is the next step? If I find out and I discovered that I want to do this thing, okay, but I'm not sure about my partner, what is the next step?
Well, you've really got to talk to your partner then. You can't just because quite honestly, they're probably going to feel a little bit sideswiped. It's like, oh my God, where did this come from? So it's making sure that you understand what's going on for you first. So talking to somebody, maybe even doing a little bit of research about exactly what it is that you're feeling and what it is that you're wanting. Because a lot of the time we go into these type of things and we actually don't know what we want, or we don't know what it looks like, or we don't know what it should look like. And then we have to start talking to our partner. And that would be a really, really gentle conversation first, because honestly, you'll probably end up getting the reaction depending on if your partner is just not interested. You may get filled with shame because of how they respond. And that's a big thing to have to sit with, is when you're being vulnerable. I'm thinking that I want to open the marriage up or open the relationship because of X, Y, and Z reason. And then your partner comes at you because, all you're going to do is read through Facebook threads and see how people respond to anything to do with different type of relationships. There's still so much judgment and stigma out there that you'll probably get that back from your partner. And it comes from not understanding. So it's also helping them understand. But you need to understand first, so then you can help them understand. You're going to have a little bit of understanding at least. So it's having that conversation after you've worked out a few things in yourself, and then you can explore with them as well. But having that, hey, I think this is what's going on for me. Can we talk about it? Instead of just, this is what I want. Too bad, so sad if you don't want it. That's just how it is. We never give ultimatums.
Can you give me an example of what could be this kind of conversation?
Yeah. So, I could come to you, just you be my husband for a bit. Yeah. I could come to you and go,
Okay.
I've been thinking about this for a little while, and I've been feeling as though there's something missing maybe in my life. I'm not quite sure what it is. So I sort of went on a bit of a deep dive tank thing into all these relationship styles and stuff. And I'm just wondering what your thoughts are around if we were to explore or consider, and I'd really love to know where you're at with maybe sort of opening our relationship up a little bit, because I'm feeling that there's just something a little bit missing for me. Is that something that we can talk about?
That was very gentle way to say something very complicated to say, because I can see even in my office sometimes they talking about experience and they're not so gentle. So they're pretty straightforward, but because there is no education on how to communicate on this very important conversation. Yeah. And what do you think is the best? The best would be for them if then they accept. If, for example, I say, yes, look, I agree with you, we can talk about what is the best way. The best way is them to do everything themselves, or maybe it's better have a guidance where they can, maybe a third person can help them to go through situation and conversation and meanings, maybe.
Definitely getting help. If you can't communicate properly and you're finding that emotions are getting involved and the conversation is going around in circles, or that you're not being understood properly because comprehension's not there, or you're feeling as though you're not being heard and that validation's not there, definitely seek out someone to help guide you through this, because it's a really, really tricky switch in dynamic, because what you're actually doing is going from two to more. And the adding extra people, even if it's just casually, as in a swinging or an open style relationship, is actually going to change the dynamic between you and your primary partner. So having someone to help you guide through those conversations and ask different questions that you've never thought about asking, because we get stuck sometimes. We all get stuck, right, in those conversations when they're really difficult. But having somebody who's just sitting on the sidelines and who can sort of go and just ask and tease out the question about, well, where has that feeling come from? Because a lot of the time we sit on this surface level when we're talking about emotion. We don't go deeper and try and figure out what's really, really going on underneath it. So it's finding out and having that, having someone to help you do that. So it's not so overwhelming. You can just take it slowly, bit by bit then. Definitely get help.
Yeah, having someone that can help you maybe to rephrase the question, to rephrase the thought, because sometimes what we think and what we say many times is two different things.
Yeah.
I can see myself sometime and go to do my public speaking in my head. The speech is there, and then when I start to speak, something else come out. I say, "Wow, this wasn't in my mind, but that's fine."
Yeah,
Had someone,
constantly. But yeah,
so
I mean,
someone,
I do it too. I'll be sitting there and I'll be explaining something, and then I'll always go, "Did that make sense?" And it wasn't I'm not saying it's like, do you get it because you don't understand it because you're not smart enough to do it. It's literally me going, did that make sense? As in, the way that I said that, did you understand that? Because sometimes I don't even understand it myself.
Absolutely. Yeah. Especially in this kind of conversation that are so full of triggers that it's like
Oh
you
my God.
walking on a eggshell, no?
Attachment wounds galore come up in this. They really, really do. Every bit of insecurity, every bit of jealousy, every bit of fear that they're going to lose someone, every bit of abandonment wound, every childhood attachment experience that someone's ever had will come up when you're doing this. It comes right to the surface. Yep.
For all of you to listen, if you have this desire to open the relationship, Kellie just give you the tools and one way to start the conversation about this kind of situation. If you want to open your relationship and try something new, you must learn how to understand why you want to pursue this new route, what are the meaning behind that, and then find a way to communicate in the right way without hurting the other. What are the new situation in your life? That's correct, Kellie?
Yeah. And never force anyone into this. That's the biggest thing and we see it so often, where it's that gentle coercion, right? Well, people don't even realize that they're doing it. It's just that they want something so bad that they actually don't realize that the way that they're doing something is coercion in its all set intents and purposes. And it's just that gentleness. And then what happens is usually the other partner has this massive amount of fear that they're going to lose them. So then they decide that, okay, I'll give it a go. And then they find that it's just not for them. And there is just so much heartbreak at the end of it. So that's why it is so important to communicate constantly, open communication, massive, massive, deep feeling stuff to be able to get through it. And if you both end up on the same page and you're communicating and you're making negotiations and you're following boundaries and the rules that have been set by each other, you will have success with this. But it's just making sure that it's absolutely what you want to do and how you want it to look like. Because every single ethical non-monogamy relationship is different.
Yes, every relationship is different. Every couple is different. And in this situation is the same. Everybody are different. Can you give me some numbers about how big is in Australia, and if you can, in Perth, this community?
What we do know is men are more likely to be wanting to be in an ethical non-monogamous relationship than women. Roughly 60% are men who are wanting to pursue this. The average at the moment in Australia for, I think it was the 23 to 44-year-old age group, you're looking at about 23% of couples who are actually exploring or wanting to explore this. So it's not mainstream, but it's definitely not as downplayed as what we think it is. And that number, I mean, when we're talking about statistics, we're always talking about a very, very small sample size of whoever they're talking to, and are people being honest? So Perth itself, I'm not too sure about, but there is quite a few polyamory groups that are on Facebook and the internet and things like that you can actually go to and meet people with. So, I mean, Perth is only I think we passed 3 million people the other week, something like that. So it is growing for people because it's becoming more acceptable. So the more acceptable it's going to come, people are going to want to try it more. Whether or not they're trying it for the right reasons, different story.
Couples, that means 1/4 of the couples trying this.
Yeah, it's huge, right?
I think it's huge. And probably this number do not count the people do not say they're going to do it.
Yeah, yep. And what's more interesting too is it seems to be that longer term. So if you've been married or together for about that 11 to 20 year mark, 29% of couples roughly are actually wanting to try this. So it's, yeah.
So you say that men are the
Men.
most likely.
Yep.
61%, correct?
Roughly about, it was 60 to 69%. And that's if we're being, give or take, it's self-reporting.
What make you think men are more likely to pursue this kind of lifestyle?
If you're looking at it purely from a sexual point of view, it would be because men are perceived to have a higher sex drive than women. Notice the word perceived to have a higher sex drive than women. Men are also perceived to have a higher avoidance tendency than women. So they're not actually going to be connecting and wanting to stay with one partner more. They're perceived to be more bored. So they want to go out and explore a little bit. So if you're looking at it purely from a sexual point of view, it's more about gratification and men wanting to seek out more gratification than what women do, because men get connection from sex on an average. So we're talking very, very generalized here, because I know I've had couples sitting in our office that are completely the opposite. And it's the woman who gets more satisfaction and more gratification and more connection from sex and touch than what their male partner does. When we're talking about this stuff, I just want to make it very clear that we are generalizing here, but it's men who are the ones who are actually wanting to have more of a connection, and they feel connection with their partners by sex. They have all of that, I mean, you work with this population. You know what men are like. You're a man. You can tell me that yourself. Is that true? Is that how is the generalization true?
Well, it is true, but I think as well that we are more open to talk about these things, for the simple reason that for us is being less ashamed, is accepted by society, that men go around, do whatever they want, when the women, if they have the same lifestyle, they're being judged as not good women are impure. In the recent year, women could lose everything on that. In some countries, women can lose their life if they have extramarital relationship. So I don't think that women are more free to do, maybe to say they want to perceive this kind of lifestyle, are because we allowed to do it. As a
Yeah.
man, is what you're looking for. Men think about only about that. But it's not true. There's a lot of women have desire the same level of intimacy have men. The difference is about who talks more about what.
The freedom that comes with, yes. Yeah. Yeah. I totally get where you're talking about then. And I would agree with you there. And that's actually one thing that I love about the kink and BDSM scene, is because it removes all of that. There's no shame. There's no, I mean, that's a whole different topic type thing again, but there's the stigma around actually enjoyment, and talking about what you want and what you need is not there, compared to, you don't have that gender imbalance between the two. So yeah, men do definitely have more freedom around how they feel about sex. That's for sure.
What is sure is that a single man is more likely to look for this kind of situation than a woman. But is because as well, for a woman is much more dangerous to find herself in this kind of situation where you don't know people, and do this kind of, for example, swinging, or they call the unicorns, not the
Unicorn.
unicorn,
Yeah.
the unicorns.
Yeah.
These why are so difficult find this unicorn, because women tend to go somewhere where they feel safe to do these things, and maybe they don't talk about.
Yeah. Interestingly, when we're talking about a couple opening up and wanting to introduce a unicorn, so a unicorn, for people who don't know, is the single third party that comes into the relationship just as a one-off. There is actually, when you talk to people in community, the term unicorn is actually really, really frowned upon, because it's the meaning is, we're looking for a needle in a haystack. That's why they're called a unicorn. But when people are unicorn hunting, it's frowned upon really quite highly, because nobody wants to be seeing that that's what they're doing. Even though if you were to hop on, say, Red Hop High, you would find that there is so many couples out there looking for the unicorn. And interestingly here is that they're mainly looking for women. They're not looking for male unicorns. They're looking for women. Men are not a unicorn because they'll jump in. As you said, it's all about that freedom and that expression and that ability to be able to want to go and do things and join in on a threesome. Whereas a woman is less likely to, so they're harder to find. So the unicorn is definitely a frowned upon term, but that is what they want. And there's the whole bit about the one penis policy. So the man will set in place that we can have another woman, but we can't have another man come into our dynamic. So it becomes a little bit unfair
there. That is yes, I agree with you. If you do once, you should do the other one as well.
Yes, it happens quite a lot, is that sort of boundary. Yeah.
Again, if the couple, they looking for just for the unicorn and not for the man, maybe it's because they agreed to that.
Yes, yeah, they would have agreed to it. I beg to ask, the question is, are they actually allowed to look for a man?
Yes. Well, as everything, I think there is two people here. Usually there is a couple. We talk about couples here. If a couple decide to looking for a third party, I think if they reach that point, I think they discuss what they're looking for. I can see in my practice, I don't know if maybe you agree with me, but women are more open to start to exploring this world with another woman.
Mm-hmm. It's
More
safer.
than another man.
Yeah.
It's safer.
It's safer.
We talk always about safety, and yeah.
Yeah, it's less intimidating. Yeah, it's less intimidating. Women are more gentle, but there's also quite often, whereas women will go and put restrictions on what the other, like the third party woman would need to look like. So she's not allowed to be younger. She's not allowed to be prettier. She's not allowed to have this body type. She's not allowed to have this. because that way they feel more, they don't feel as though there's a big comparison, and then they're not worried about their own body issues, because women come into, men and women both have body issues, of course, but that comes out to play a lot more when we're starting to open up relationships. All of those, that's what I mean, all of those things that you feel about yourself, all those parts of yourself that you really struggle with, they really come to light when you start talking about this. More so than if you're just talking about general intimacy between a normal couple without going into the ethical non-monogamy stuff. So everything just bubbles up to the surface even more. So, and that's when you really find out where all that deep-seated belief systems are, and have to work through that.
Interesting. Do you think if a couple want to start this kind of lifestyle, should maybe start with professional?
As in a paid professional prostitute to come in as the third person?
Yeah.
Could be.
Sex worker or...
It's a safe option, right?
Safe option.
A safe option.
But is what you see people starting to approach this kind of world actually doing it, or not really?
Not really, no. They're on places like Red Hot Pie. They're on places like Tinder. They're on, trying to find whoever they can find out there. I think Red Hot Pie would probably be one of the biggest websites and apps for finding the extras and opening up a new relationship. Or going into the local swinging clubs is probably a really good place where they can actually find people as well, because that's what people are there for. They're either there looking or they're partaking. So if you go into the local swing clubs in Perth, then, or Australia, anywhere in Australia, of course, then you'll always find people who may be interested in there too. But it's I think the numbers for people actually involving sex workers in coming into and exploring that, it's a safer option in the sense that they're not exploring with somebody who doesn't know what they're doing, which can be really, really awkward for some people. Quite often you'll see ads that'll come up and go, we're new, but we don't want someone who is also new to this, so we feel more comfortable, because then again, that's the disparity in knowledge, and people don't like to feel as though someone has got more knowledge than them. So it adds to the discomfort level. So it can, and they can be sort of guided that way. But yeah.
It can make it less threatened for the two in a relationship, having someone paid, because anyway, when it's finished, instead to have someone that actually can come inside the relationship.
People have feelings, right? People, when you're inviting people into your relationship and they're not, and they know that they're there for a reason, but then because there is so much communication that happens prior, or there should be so much communication that happens prior to everybody hooking up and meeting up, then you never know what can happen. Whereas if you're working with somebody who is a professional, then it's just very business-like transaction where there's no feelings as such are getting involved. There's a boundary line is a lot firmer. They know exactly what's going to happen. Yeah.
It's like go at the cinema. You pay for the ticket, you watch a movie, and you walk away. That's it. Finish. Very, very similar. You pay this person, that she or him come in, well, your fun for the time that you paid, and that's finished. It can be a good way for couples to try to understand if actually what they want to do.
Yes.
Correct?
And I do know that there is a company in Perth. I don't know exactly who they are, but there is actually a company in Perth where you can go for, from what I can understand, is sex therapy, but then they end up doing physical stuff, which is not in my ethics. But yeah.
Okay. I didn't know this one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I
Thank
found
you.
out from a phone call. I had a phone call about it one day. So someone was inquiring about some stuff, and I got this whole big story about what had happened, and I was absolutely horrified because A, it wasn't consensual. The husband pretty much was not consenting, but then sort of went, oh, well, my wife wants it. Yeah, it was a big, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we need to be careful.
Very careful. Very careful. Let's come back to talk about lifestyle. What is the boundaries that people should put in place? What is the boundaries that usually people have in this kind of situation?
So if we're talking about open relationships, of course, that's going to be a different boundary to swingers, which is going to be a different boundary to polyamory. So open relationship is when you're just casually having sex with people and your partner is not there. So you're going off and you're finding somebody and you're having sex with someone else. Swingers is when you are both sharing with other couples, you're wife swapping, husband swapping, or you're having group sex. And polyamory is where you're actually having relationships with other people, whether it's all of you are in relationship together or 1, 2, 3, 4, and then it can just go out from there like a big spider web. So the boundaries for each style is going to be different. But I think one of the biggest things, especially for open and swingers, is whether or not the discussion around safe sex comes up. So using protection, what that looks like, if it's actually allowable or not. So some people will be absolutely no, we are not doing, unprotected sex, and other people are like, yep, okay, that's fine. Whereas polyamory are more likely to be fluid bonded, which means that they actually are having sex with all of everybody and they're all clean, they've all been tested, and none of them are using protection. So that's what's called fluid bonding. So there's that in place. The amount of time and contact everybody spends with each other, the amount of what activities people are doing with each other. For some people, something may be off bounds. For one person, you may be able to say, you might be allowed to kiss them and someone else you're not. So it just sort of depends on each dynamic, and it depends on what that person's boundary is itself. So are you allowed to physically date them, or are you just hooking up with them? Are you allowed to do kink with them, or are you allowed to just only do kink and no sex? So it's working out what that looks like for everybody.
Do you think that they should have a sort of contract between each other?
Would definitely help, because what's written on word, on paper, you can't dispute. Whereas if it's, oh no, you said this last week and you said it was okay, and if someone's tuned out halfway through a conversation, there's no recollection of it. Or somebody could backtrack and say, no, I actually said, I didn't say that. Whereas if it's actually written in a contract and then both of you or all of you are agreeing, then you know what's expected. There's no surprises within those boundaries. And then you can come back and review it every month. So I always say that's a good idea to have a review every month. This, like the first of the month or something, come in, have a review about your contract. Is this still sitting okay? Do we need to tweak it? And then sign off on it again. It just takes out the ambiguity of, I don't know, you said, they said, type thing. It just makes it more solid. Yeah. You know exactly what's expected. It's why we have contracts for everything. It's just that we never read them.
Well,
this one you should read.
A marriage.
Yeah, but it's just so no one talks about who's going to share the housework when you get married, or how finances are going to be done. People just jump in and then they go, why are we having issues about this now? Because you didn't talk about it beforehand. Yeah.
No, I absolutely agree. And I was talking the other day about money with a money coach, and we were talking about the fact that people are struggling to talk about finance, especially in a dating time. When you are in dating time, that you start to go out with someone, and you want to talk about money, not because you want to know how much money you have in the bank account. You want to know what is their relationship with money and what they want to do with money. And at the same that you want to talk about this kind of conversation, this is why it's very important conversation that we have today, because people do not talk about how much sex they want, how much sex they expect, what are the expectations on intimacy, what is the intimacy between them. Then they find each other that the level of arousal is different. Okay? And then they find each other, say, now what we do? This is not what they sign up for.
Yep. Especially after the new relationship energy has worn off and no one's humping like rabbits anymore, right?
Yes.
And everyone's tired and go back into the normal everyday life. And you just like, oh, I really just don't feel like it today. But hang on, 6 months ago, we were doing it every day. And that's a lot of the time when people will sort of go, oh, well, you can't feel my needs. So therefore, how about we think about doing X, Y, and Z? Or they go and find it themselves without being ethical. So, yes, it is definitely a conversation to have. And it changes during life cycle. You don't add kids into the mix, everything shifts again. You add extra work, extra stress. Your sex drives are never going to be where they were when you first started dating, ever.
No,
You can come back to it, but it's
eh,
just going to fluctuate constantly. Yeah.
you can come back to it, but I think you really need to sit down and talk. As otherwise, this is why I can see people struggling a lot in conversate about anything they do, because they lose the connection between each other. And
Yep. And there's so much shame and judgment, isn't there, in everything that we do? And there's so much, I think one of the best things that ever came out of, can't even remember, the breakup movie, that whole kitchen breakup scene where she's standing there and she's like, I want you to want to do the dishes. That I think there's a whole generation that need to watch this movie because that's my generation type movie, whereas the younger generation haven't watched it yet. So they may be missing that part of things. Whereas I want you to want to do the breakup. So
the
you don't
breakup,
even know it.
no,
You need to just,
but I do the work. The
yes,
breakup.
there is a scene there where they're arguing over dishes, right? But it's actually not about the dishes. It's about everything but the dishes. And it's so prominent in what we see every day in relationships. And the same thing will show up when you want to open your relationship up, because you're going to be having a conversation about one thing, but it's not necessarily what you're actually talking about. And that's why if you get stuck, that you're better off going and finding someone to help you unpack that better. So then you can actually be, what are we talking about here? Because on the surface, we're saying, I'm just not getting enough sex. Is that really the problem? Or is there something else going on? Yeah. Sorry.
It's not about the
Fine
sex.
horse moment.
It's about no.
Yep.
It's not about the sex. Many times it's about the feeling lonely.
Yep. It's the
feeling
connection.
lonely or don't feel loved because maybe your love language is touch. You need that things going on, and it's not about sex. It's not about the number, but it's about be intimate with your partner.
Yep.
So as I say with my client, I was talking the other day with my client and say, it's not about the toilet seat. It's about the meaning of the request and denied to the request to put down the toilet. It's not about the toilet.
Mm-hmm.
Is the request and the fact you don't do it and the other person feel that you don't respect the request.
Yep.
So if you don't respect the request, I feel that you don't love me, you don't respect me.
Exactly.
Enough.
Exactly. And this
Correct.
comes across the board with so much stuff. And we all feel the same thing. We like to think that we're actually different and we're individual and no one knows how we feel. But I can guarantee you put yourself in a room of 100 people and you all start telling the same story, 98 of those people are going to put their hand up and go, you ever know what that feels like? I know what you mean by that. I can relate. Yep.
Why do you think it's still so hard for our society, especially in Australia, that we call each other, we call Australia a free country, free expression country. Why is it so difficult for people to talk about this kind of relationship?
It's different. It threatens society's view of family. It threatens society's view of family. It's confusing. They don't understand it. It's that whole thing of the Western society, because we have non-monogamy relationships quite prevalent in Eastern cultures. It's a Western culture thing that we have one man, one woman, and they're together, monogamous forever and a day. The reality is it's less and less that because we are living longer. So therefore we are actually having multiple partners and getting divorced and married and separated and stuff because we don't die until we're like 90 now. So back, when you first got back in the day, you'd get married at 15, 14 and you'd be having kids and then you're dead at 40. So there's not that much time you have to be with the one person. Plus it was still frowned upon for divorce back then. Whereas now we just have this ability to be more free in certain things, but it's a threat to society because it's different, people don't understand that how you can love more than one person at a time. They don't understand how you can love somebody but want to have sex with someone else, because love and sex is seen as the same thing. People can't actually see that it can be two different things for some people.
Do you think this new kind of relationship one day will take over?
No. Nope. It's too ingrained. It's too ingrained.
I did a talk a few months ago about the history of marriage, and working about this page, I came across this tribe in Venezuela. It's called the Bari people, and the Bari people have this way to be married. So the boy and the girl, they got married. Of course, the parents decide who married who. Then the guy that get married will be the first husband. But because they don't have contraception, they don't have hospital, they don't have the knowledge that we have in a modern society, they believe that a woman needs a lot of washing inside to be pregnant. And they believe that only one man cannot do the job. So allowed the lady to go around the village and find suitable extra part. So this extra partner, 3, 4, 5 partners, she will name them. And in case she will remain pregnant, the kid will be the son of the husband.
Mm-hmm.
But if the husband die, the other one next will step in as a role model for the kid. So actually all the village will be taken care of the kid. It's not just the kid of the couple, the kid of the village. And this is a ancient tribe go around before Colombo arrived in South America. It's one of the ancient tribe in South America. So I was thinking, try to think, here is the woman that decides what to do. It's not a man. Try to think, take this kind of relationship and taking here in all modern society, what could be? It's interesting question.
Empowering.
How
How
empowering.
empowering.
Yeah.
Because when we think about Eastern culture, it's usually the man has lots of wives, right? Sister wife communities and stuff like
Yes.
that. It's rare to have the women who have multiple husbands and multiple partners. That is so empowering, though, for the woman to choose.
It's very fascinating the way they live. Everything they do is very, very fascinating. But I think about the fact that actually it's all the community to take care of the kid, because the partner of this young lady are son of other families, and all these people are actually involved to raise the newborn. And of course they do, because it's to keep the tribe still alive, because I think there is only 7,000-8,000 remain. 97% have been wiped out in the last 600 years. This for them is and the government of Venezuela wanted to go and teach them about sex, but because they understand now the dynamic between the families, between the families in the tribe, they just decide to live it like this in the way they say. And it worked. It worked for them. So, yeah.
That's
interesting.
That's amazing. Because, we used to be like that, had community raising family and children, not so much anymore. But yeah, that's amazing, isn't it? On so many levels. That's wonderful. Yeah.
Would you like to tell me one bad story about a couple that decide to go through this kind of lifestyle and then find themselves in trouble and didn't work?
Let me think. I think the biggest one that comes up, and it's not just one, I see this multiple in the senses, as I've said, all the way through, is around that don't push, because it's that consent boundary and that consent violation. There is the person who feels as though they get pushed in. And then the ultimatum, well, I'm doing this, and then they go anyway, and then the other person doesn't feel like they have a choice, so they lose everything. So yeah, I'm thinking of a few that I could blend together into one that could quite easily do that. And just the misunderstanding of, go and reading all the books. I've read the books. I've done this. I've done that. There's books out there like Polysecure and all of those type of things, which is an actually brilliant read. So it's that Polysecure comes from an attachment perspective, which is really important. And we're talking about any relationship style is looking at the people's, how they attach to other people. Yeah. It's that push and that stuff that comes up and it doesn't get that, or boundary violation, or reading the books and I have to do it this way because the book says I have to do it this way, but everything in your gut is telling you that it's wrong and you're still doing it anyway. And then resentment and stuff comes through. One person wants to go out and open the relationship up for whatever reason. The other person thinks it's the right thing to do because they feel that the partner has to be happy and that's their job to make them happy, which is first wrong mistake. So going off and doing all the research, listening to all the podcasts and watching all the videos, and again, just ignoring everything in their gut that says, no, I don't want to do this, being completely unhappy, being completely miserable, but doing it anyway because the partner's happy. Yeah. That's a nightmare. And still in it, doesn't want to be. And it's just a lot of that work is around, come on, we actually need to put your needs and understanding what your needs are, because the narrative is, though, that my needs don't matter. It's all up to my partner because that's the way that the childhood was brought through. So.
Okay. And the other side, successful story?
A successful story would be I'm thinking that the conversation was opened gently, and it was opened with expression, and it was open with curiosity, and then the boundaries set in place, and there was a lot of conversation, a lot of negotiation. Partners were coming in to having different conversations with therapists and working out exactly what they wanted to have, and then both of them actually realizing that they didn't want to actually open the relationship. Well, the person who thought that they were wanting to be non-monogamous their whole life actually wasn't. It's just that they hadn't found the person that they wanted to settle down with, and they were using it as an excuse to stay detached from everybody else because of all their trauma. So that's going against what we're talking about, because they were non-monogamous to start with, and then they were trying to be non-monogamous together. The other person was not non-monogamous, so was really struggling with all the feelings coming up around about jealous and envy and rejection and abandonment and all that sort of stuff. The other person was sitting there going, oh, no, but this is what I really want. You just need to, I'm giving you time. And then they realized that it's actually not what they wanted, and they ended up being monogamous. There's an open door, though, to have a possibility of a non-monogamy in the future, but it's not right for them right now. So they've decided to concentrate on their relationship instead of having a third person involved, 3 or 4 people involved.
Beautiful, beautiful.
So it
happens years ago. Yeah, it happens years ago. Not my client. I met this guy, and I told him, hey, I'm gonna do couple therapy. So he asked me, I would like to understand if it's possible for me do not have a relationship that is on just with one person. So, and I asked a couple of questions, and I discovered that he was coming from a family that was open, they were swingers and they were nudists, and he was living the lifestyle since was a little. And the parents, both of them were coming from parents that used to do the lifestyle as well. So it was a generational thing that was going on there. And that he was really not willing to do that.
Wow.
I don't understand why I cannot have a relationship with just one person. If it's possible.
Yeah, that's challenging the whole narrative of what they've been brought through, that messaging, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I try to I can ask myself is, if for him was a way to rebel to his parents, because he was quite young. I think was 19, 20. I asked myself, is this the way that maybe he want to rebel to the parents? Or it's just something that can come in from inside you?
I think it's something that's in you. I think it's in you. You either are or you aren't. Because so many people try it and they realize that it's just not for them. And so many people try and go monogamous and they realize that's not for them. So I do honestly believe that it's something that's innate of us, because we were never, like back in Neanderthal days and stuff, we were never monogamous back then. There is, animal species that are non-monogamous. It's not something that is actually innate of us all the time. There's cultures, as we've spoken about, which are not non-monogamous. Which are non-monogamous. So it's something that I really feel it's in your heart. But you've got to look at the why. So is it because of what you're talking about? Are we rebelling because your whole family had this whole lineage of history of where you're actually having polyamory? And my God, that would just be so overwhelming. But it's also very normal for them to then want to question, okay, is this right for me? Are we looking at avoidance? Are we looking at attachment? Are we looking at trauma? Or are we looking at this is actually what I really, really, really want? And that's where it comes into, is it in your heart and soul that this is where you're at? The same way you would explore anything that you want to do.
Okay, we are almost at the end of this conversation. And can you give me 3 quick steps for couples now that want to come listening this podcast and they are curious about open relationship? 3 quick steps they should take.
Start by doing a little bit of research is one thing. And then if it feels right with what you're reading, then keep exploring, going find somebody then maybe to talk about, and then also opening up that conversation within yourselves and talking about it with each other. As I said, there's books out there like Polysecure. There's beautiful websites out there, but it's honoring. The biggest thing here is honoring exactly what you feel when you see this and when you read it. If it's a no, it feels ick, don't go there. If it's, oh, this is curious, I could get into this, go there. Then start talking to each other. And then if you need to, go and actually then talk to somebody to set down your boundaries and stuff like that, and just be safe.
Can you give me a couple of books, 2 books people can read about this topic?
God, Polysecure is definitely one. And then it's not actually a book around ethical non-monogamy stuff. Actually, anything to do with Esther Perel. There you go. Mating in Captivity. That's a really, really good one. She actually talks about it in there too. So anything that Esther talks about is phenomenal. But yeah, Polysecure and Mating in Captivity would be my top 2.
Okay. If someone want to work with you, where they can find you?
Website, kelliesheldon.com.au. So if you just Google my name, it should come up everywhere, especially if it's Kellie Sheldon Perth, and they can book in online or they can give us a phone call or hop on the website and just have a look and send us an email. Kellie, it's Breaking the Silence on SA at Instagram, because my Instagram focus is mainly on sexual assault.
Okay. I love it. Maybe one day we can talk about this topic as well. Thank you so much, Kellie. Everybody,
So thank you for having me.
thank you, Kellie, to be here today. Everyone out there, I know that life can be very stressful sometimes, and sometimes we believe that we want to do something. We must make sure that we do the right things and we do the things that we want to do with consent.
Yes, enthusiastic, informed, consent. If it's not a F yes, it's a no.
No. Don't do that. No.
Yeah.
Especially if you have a good relationship and you need just to mix up the things to make it right. Again, that is not the right way to go. First, find someone to work out what are the problems, correct, Kellie? And then maybe talk about what we can do as a couple to have fun again.
Yes. Yeah. If you're on the same page and you want to go out and you both know that you want to open it up and you just want to be doing whatever, go for it. Be safe while you're doing it. Have a good time while you're doing it and communicate with each other. Otherwise, think about it. Yeah. Everything's good.
Ciao a tutti from POP, Progress Over Perfection. See you at the next podcast. Ciao!